Order! I didn't hear the start. Order! Honourable Hikia-Parata, when I rise to my feet, I expect you to stop the interjecting. I didn't hear what started it, but the continuation of the interjection will only lead to disorder. Question number 6, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Does he stand by his statement that, quote, there is no evidence, no good reason to believe that there will be widespread farm foreclosures, end quote?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes. Clearly many farmers will be under pressure, and there's a lot of uncertainty about the forward path for milk prices. But this is a resilient and adaptive industry, and it has a supportive banking sector. So while it's almost certain there will be some real difficulty for farmers, we've yet to see just how widespread that would be. It's certainly our view that because there is long-term confidence in the future of the dairy industry, that the banking sector and the farming sector will stick together because it's in their mutual interest not to have widespread farming foreclosures.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how does he reconcile that belief with the fact that 35 farms in Southland, his old electorate, have been told by one bank that they will have to sell at the end of the season because the bank is pulling its funding?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I suspect that won't be the first such rumour, and any bank contemplating that action would have to consider the impact of putting 35 farms on the market in Southland, because they may find that that would have a significant impact on the security of their debt held in hundreds of other farms. And I suspect they will be giving that matter that sort of consideration.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, is he aware that both the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority and the Reserve Bank of Australia are concerned about the level of exposure to New Zealand's dairy industry on the part of Australian banks? And if so, is he also aware that those banks are likely to come under instruction to reduce that exposure?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm aware of the regulatory authority's concern, and I think the Reserve Bank of New Zealand has done a good job actually of describing its concerns over the last 12 or 18 months. As to what Australian banks instruct New Zealand banks to do, I don't know, but I would just say what I said before, and that is that it's in the interests of the banking sector and the farming sector to stick together through these tough times.
Point of order.
A point of order, Richard Prosser.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table a document prepared by the Library outlining concerns held by Australian Financial Regulatory.
There is objection. So, I'll put the leave, and then the leave is sought to table that. There is objection. Further supplementary.
To the Minister, is he concerned that decent, hard-working, salt-of-the-earth Kiwi farmers and their families will be evicted, forced off their land, making them homeless by banks and receivers? And if not, why not?
The Honourable Bill English.
Yes, Mr Speaker, I am concerned, but I have to say that even in Southland it won't be the first time I can recall all those sort of things actually happening in the late 80s in the sheep and beef industry. But what I also know is that those same farming families are resilient. They took commercial risks knowing what those risks were, and they borrowed money from responsible financial institutions. And if they all stick together, then most of them will get through.
Point of order, Richard Prosser.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table an email from a lawyer representing a South Wairarapa farmer who's going to be evicted by his farm the week after next by Rabobank-appointed receivers for no reason other than that they can.
Before I put the leave, is there any privacy issues that the member has covered off within that email?
They're all taken care of, sir.
Leave is sought to table that particular email. Is there any objection? There is. Question.
Supplementary.
Order. Order. Do I have another point of order?
No, supplementary. Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, does the Minister believe that there are sufficient New Zealand resident farmers in a financial position to purchase large numbers of foreclosed farms at current and forecast payout rates, or will the banks and the receivers attempt to sell these farms to foreigners instead?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't think I have any ministerial responsibility for that. What we are responsible for is the Overseas Investment Act, which was largely written by New Zealand First back in the early 2000s, and any application to buy farms will have to pass through that act, and the thresholds are pretty high as a result of the court cases over the case over the Crayford farms and the Shanghai pension